So it looks like you've completed The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. You started the game from the beginning and worked your way through the epic adventure. You awakened and left the Shrine of Resurrection and finally gathered your bearings to leave the Great Plateau, discovering secrets and mysteries hidden throughout the huge massive world of Hyrule. The 120 shrines crumbled at your feet as you smashed them out one after the other. The ancient divine beasts have been reclaimed and returned back to the rightful owners, and you may have even managed to collect every single Korok seed in the game. And lastly, and most importantly, you put an end to the wicked beast who started the fall of Hyrule, Calamity Ganon. Well, let's just say you finished him off in a somewhat anticlimactic face-off. And then, the game throws a minor spanner in the works when Princess Zelda uses what looks to be the Triforce and sends him, I don't even know, light years away from Hyrule, I guess? So, I mean, that's pretty much it for Ganon, right? Well, obviously not, which is why we are getting a sequel to Breath of the Wild, which many believe could be the final cleanup of Calamity Ganon. But what if I told you that it's very unlikely Ganon will be defeated in Breath of the Wild 2, and instead be defeated in a third game to make Breath of the Wild a trilogy? You probably think it's crazy, right? But stick around and I'll tell you why Breath of the Wild 3 could happen and why Link and Zelda could fail in the upcoming sequel. So it looks like Breath of the Wild 2 is going to focus more on Ganondorf, which if you didn't know is a humanoid form of Ganon, judging by the new Breath of the Wild 2 trailer anyway. The details of the trailer have been covered by many other Zelda YouTubers, so I'm not necessarily going to be speculating and getting into the small details about the Breath of the Wild trailer. But anyone who has watched the trailer can pretty much guess that the mummified corpse is more than likely Ganondorf. I mean, the red hair is a dead giveaway. Anyway, it would kind of make sense from a storyline perspective, and let's be honest, nobody really wants a boring fight with Ganon again. Well, I personally don't. The end fight with Ganon in the original game was one of my least favourite parts, so an epic Ganondorf fight could solve this. But what does Ganondorf mean for Breath of the Wild 2? Well, this could spell big trouble for our two heroes, Link and Zelda. Looking at Ganondorf in the trailer, we can tell he is extremely angry. Anger we haven't seen since Twilight Princess. The neck-cracking sound combined with the glowing red eyes show that he means business this time around. He wants us to know that he will not be beaten so easily, and I for one believe him. I don't believe that Link and Zelda will defeat him in Breath of the Wild 2, but that's not to say a possible third game wouldn't see the demise of Ganon. Ganon in the original Breath of the Wild is very powerful and referred to as godlike, only being brought down by the Hylian champions Link and Zelda. When Ganon is almost defeated, Zelda uses special powers to seal and contain Calamity Ganon far away from Hyrule, using the sacred golden triangle known as the Triforce. It's unclear if Zelda holds all three pieces of the Triforce or just one piece, but to me it seems as though Calamity Ganon at this point is not in possession of the Triforce of power. This could give us an explanation as to why Link and Zelda are in the dark cave with Ganondorf in the first place. Ganondorf is very cunning, some would say he is an evil mastermind. That's why I believe that in Breath of the Wild 2 he will definitely escape his imprisonment or placement that Zelda has bestowed upon him. He will use his skills to escape and lure the two heroes to come to him. Link and Zelda, in an attempt to banish him forever, seem to have already fallen for the trap that Ganondorf has set. What his very motives are here is unclear. It could be possible that Link and Zelda are in possession of all three pieces of the Triforce and Ganondorf wants to take it for himself. I mean, the guy literally lives and exists for ultimate power. This could be the very cutscene in which Link and Zelda fail to protect Hyrule and Ganondorf steals either the full Triforce or just the Triforce of power from them. Or lastly, he could be luring Link and Zelda to a ritual that could allow him to take the shape of his human form, Ganondorf. Why he would need Link and Zelda present is unclear, but certainly not ruled out. The story for Breath of the Wild 2 could also be heavily focused on dungeons this time around. The dungeons could serve as a way of gaining access to Ganondorf, similar to Ocarina of Time, when beating a dungeon as an adult reveals a sage, and by revealing all the sages grants Link access to Ganon's tower. Now I have spoken on dungeons coming to Breath of the Wild 2, and I have to say that I for one am really hoping for the more traditional style that Zelda games have mastered in the past. I also want to state that the shrines in Breath of the Wild are probably the best feature, and I hope they return, which I'm pretty sure they will in some sort of capacity. As for the Divine Beast style of dungeon, I personally think that they need to go. Sure, they are fun the first time, but after that they are so boring, especially after multiple playthroughs. I could possibly live with having one in the game, but other than that, I would much rather have the traditional dungeon style return. Rumours surrounding Breath of the Wild 2 suggest that Ganondorf may not be the only villain in the game, much like Zant in Twilight Princess or Girium in Skyward Sword. It's possible that Ganondorf will rise up and be the true evil king of Hyrule, ruling from his newly built evil themed castle, just like he has in previous titles. Different villains we could see and face in the game could provide the necessary roadblocks that will warrant a third game, stretching out the main story so that by the time you have spent 100+ hours farming for resources, clearing dungeons and upgrading weapons and armor, you're still left feeling satisfied, even though Ganondorf is still very much alive. Breath of the Wild 2 could see us breaking down Ganondorf's defenses and wiping out his hierarchy by eliminating the higher tier warriors so that by the time we complete Breath of the Wild 2, all that remains for Breath of the Wild 3 is us versus Ganondorf. Now I know it's early days to be talking about Breath of the Wild 3 when we haven't even heard much news on Breath of the Wild 2 yet, but from a business standpoint it does make sense. Breath of the Wild is now the best selling Zelda game of all time, even surpassing the highly acclaimed Ocarina of Time, hence the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Nintendo is still a company, and like every company, the whole purpose is to make money. Zelda games in general make Nintendo a lot of money, and Breath of the Wild was the most financially successful Zelda title out of all of them, so I have no doubt that Breath of the Wild 2 will also be a success. Now providing that Breath of the Wild 2 isn't a flop, which let's be honest I don't think is even possible given the track record for Zelda titles and the time and effort that goes into creating a Zelda game, it's very unlikely it will be a bad game. So providing that Breath of the Wild 2 is a success, Nintendo could possibly want to milk the titles for all they are worth. That's not to say that they would just be money grabs. I believe that the Nintendo team could easily make a Zelda trilogy work. It's not like they would be the first company to do so either. It's pretty common in the gaming world. Zelda games are basically mirrored games from each other anyway. They all share very similar traits while still being very different in their own right. Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be darker than the original game. How much darker we really don't know, but Link and Zelda being beaten by Ganondorf, and Ganondorf ruling as an evil king would certainly set a much darker scene. While Calamity Ganon did rule Hyrule in the original game and cause mass chaos, the game still felt peaceful and hopeful. Calamity Ganon never ever made me feel threatened or left any real impactful impressions like say Majora did in Majora's Mask, and that all comes down to the atmosphere. The atmosphere in Breath of the Wild is perfect for that game, but the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer indicates a much darker and more terrifying form of Ganon, so we could be looking at a much more sinister game than what we have come to experience in recent times. But in reality, only Nintendo knows the future of the Zelda series, and everything stated in this video is my own personal speculation and opinions. Nothing here is confirmed or denied by Nintendo, so that's not to say that any of these ideas won't end up coming true. I wouldn't mind a Breath of the Wild 3, providing that Breath of the Wild 2 is able to change things up enough to make us crave more. If it turns out to be a reskin with a new storyline, then that really wouldn't justify a third game for me. But I fully trust Nintendo on this one. They've been doing it for many years and haven't let me down once. Thank you for watching the video guys. If you found the video interesting then why not give it a like. If you want to see more Zelda content be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also I'd love to hear some of your theories, so drop a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed the content and I'll see you guys in the next one.